Someone tenor Pene Pati just made his Metropolitan Opera debut as the Duke in Rigoletto, and he is currently singing Rodolfo at Bayerische Staatsoper, a role he will bring to Chicago, making his lyric opera debut in a starry cast, which includes Eileen Perez, friend of the show, as Mimi, Gabriela Reyes as Musetta, friend of the show Will Liverman as Marcello, and conductor Jordan D'Souza. Lyric Opera of Chicago is betting a lot on this production. They're going to present it 10 times between March 15th and April 12th. Before we begin this free throw on the topic of Rodolfo, here is a bit of the opening of Rodolfo's aria Che gelida manina.
Aspetti, signorina, le dirò con due parole. Chi son? Chi sei? Che faccio? Come vivo?
My guest today, calling in from Munich, is Pene Pati. Pene, welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you are in the middle of La Boheme in Munich, and you just wrapped up Rigoletto at the Met. This is a big year for you. You have your Met debut, and very soon you'll be coming to Chicago to make your lyric opera debut. You've already debuted in San Francisco, so it's not like Americans haven't seen you.
Yes.
But these houses are getting bigger, aren't they? The spaces you have to sing.
San Francisco, yeah, you're right. San Francisco was my young artist. I did the Adler Fellowship there and the Maryland there, so it's kind of like my alma mater, so to speak. And to go out to the other spots like the Met and Chicago and hopefully and more was kind of very strategic. I thought, okay, I have to time this right and go in with the right thing that really shows your voice and its capabilities. So, yeah, I feel like the timing has come right now.
Well, I would love to hear you. We're going to talk about Rodolfo in a second, but I would love to hear you sing some of this rare bel canto stuff that you're doing on your recordings. I mean, like, have you been asked to sing Raoul and Huguenot, or is anybody even making that opera happen?
You know, I think we're more inclined to do it here in Europe. But if it ever came around, because I know Michael Spires has done a lot of these obscure operas, if it comes around, I would absolutely give it a go. I think, why not? It's nice to explore something different.
I wonder if Michael Spires has built his career doing bizarro stuff because of his, very strange voice, beautiful voice. And you are right now going to be touted around as like this, young, flashy lyric tenor who sings the Duke and Rodolfo,
But also, Michael, he's such an incredible person. And I think he holds the record now for the most roles learned by somebody. I just heard that literally like 2 days ago. And I thought, wait, I thought Domingo held it, but I think he holds it now.
You're right now singing Rodolfo, and on this episode, my colleague and I are comparing favorite Bohème recordings. Do you have a favorite recording? And not just because of the tenor, because like the whole thing works.
Oh man, I think you can't get any further than, well, okay, you probably can, but this the quintessential one that I always had listened to was the Pav and Freni one.
The Karajan, yeah.
I mean, the Karajan one was,
yeah.
I mean, wow.
Yeah, no, you're right. We love that recording. Now that we've gotten that off the table, have you listened to other ones and discovered things? It's like, oh, wow, that's a different way to do it. I never thought of it.
You know what? No, but I've seen a lot of on like videos. I've actually seen the modern ones, say like Villazon and Trepko's version. I've seen a lot in person. I mean, I saw the current one with Eleonora Burato and Palenzani, and
Hmm.
I'm still trying to find, but I haven't seen any old school ones. Unless you have one that you're like, you gotta see this one.
No, I'm just thinking more about, phrasing and, well, really it's phrasing when it comes down to it. Like, where can you take time? We're so used to hearing the Carillon one. So I think that our idea of the score is like, oh, that's Carillon's idea of the score, that there's other people, like,
Yeah,
Toscanini, or for example, it's like, oh, that goes by much faster with him, or even
you're right.
James Levine. We don't talk about him right now, but you listen to how he stretches um, Mimi's aria, Mi chiamano Mimi. It's like, I did not know that aria can be 6 minutes long.
You're right. And you know what? I have done a poem that was literally under 2 hours with the interval,
Yeah.
and then one that's been like 3 hours long. So yeah, it's quite interesting to hear people's different versions. You know what's funny though is that a lot of the times it's never the artist. It's
Hmm.
always the conductor.
Hmm.
It's nearly always the conductor who either makes it either faster or slower. And disregarding the sometimes the tenor or the soprano has their own idea of how they want to interpret, but it always comes second place. It's yeah, that's the reality. And unless you're sitting at the top of the ladder,
Yeah. Well, now, how many productions have you sung of this so far that you can
this
count?
would be. I think this is my sixth. After Chicago and in San Francisco, right after there'll be 8 productions and totaling about 48 shows in total, I think. So I'm
So,
coming up to the 50.
yeah. So you have got this paced pretty well. Are there any pitfalls in the role that maybe a young tenor, just starting to learn it, might not realize? Like, oh, you gotta, not sing so much in Act 3, so you have whatever this moment in Act 4.
Oh, absolutely. The Act Three is by far the toughest. It requires a lot of emotion, but also because there's a lot of emotion, you can't fully get into it because you're gonna start pushing
Hmm.
because you're so moved by it. So you have to control so much in that, only to realize that you have to be now quite soft in the last act because you're dealing with her. You can't be screaming in her face saying,
Yeah.
"Go to sleep, go to sleep." So the pitfall really is Act Three, controlling yourself, being emotionally driven in a different way, not in a passionate way, but in a saddened, reflective way. The first act is still the toughest because you can get carried away with the first half. And then you can realize, oh God, I've got my aria and the
Yeah.
duet to come.
Are you saying, like, with
But
with the boys, like the rough housing stuff, like you are?
yeah, because when Benoit walks in, you're like, "Via di qua!" Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of big singing, but you gotta tell yourself, oh, this first half is really, it's conversational.
Hmm.
There is no real line. When Mimi turns up, she's the first one to sing lines. Everyone else is just singing conversational lines like, "Oh my God, let's burn the chair.
Yeah.
Where's the wine?"
Yeah.
It's so you take that part easy until Mimi turns up. Then you're like, okay, this is where I really gotta bunker down and use my technique.
Last question for you. We know that you you came up in New Zealand, and that you met Kiri Te Kanawa early in your studies.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about her, and maybe what mentorship she's offered you, and what you might have gained just by even listening to her as an artist?
I will never forget the first time I met her. She told me to turn up to a masterclass that she was taking at 7 a.m. And I thought, this is a test. Like,
Hmm.
why would you tell me to turn up at 7 a.m.?
Hmm.
And she goes, I'm going to be there to get ready for the masterclass at 8 o'clock. First of all, who's doing a masterclass at 8 o'clock? I
Hmm.
mean, come on, no singers want to do this. But I turn up at 7 o'clock and she sings Au Conjador, the list at 7 o'clock. And I thought, okay, well, she's ready to go.
And at this point, she's like in
From
her 60s, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was literally just like 7, 10 years ago,
Okay.
actually. And she took me under her wing and she really looked after me in the first part of my journey. And I remember she bought me clothes in Cardiff because I was too embarrassed to say that I couldn't afford anything. Like I had this jacket, and that was it. And she was like, "Why have you got this thin jacket in the middle of winter?" And I kept saying, "Oh well, well, it's because I got thick skin." And then she pulled me aside. She goes, "I know you're just trying to hide it. You're very islander about it." I said, "Oh, thank you, Auntie." And so she took me out and she invited me to her home as well. And she was such an auntie. She wasn't even Kiri Te Kanawa until we stepped out, and then she turned into Kiri Te Kanawa. But underneath it all, she was so loving, and she was so she gave a lot of direction, saying, maybe you should try this. You should go here. Let's listen to random things. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed her mentorship.
Kiri Te Kanawa, fellow Kiwi, singing a little bit of Mimi. That's from a live performance in Victoria State Opera in Melbourne from 1989. And now that we've heard about Rodolfo from Pene Pati, we thought we'd take a little bit of time to consider La Boheme recording, because I know that, you kids out there don't know where to start. There really are
almost too many good options available to you.
Well, the option that most collectors end up recommending as one of the top two is is mono, right? The Beecham?
From 56, I want to say.
Yeah. A mono set conducted by Thomas Beecham, starring Jussi Björling as Rodolfo and Victoria de los Angeles as Mimi, with Lucina Mara as Musetta and Robert Merrill as Marcello. That's a pretty incredible cast. I enjoy this recording because I think that Victoria de los Angeles does achieve a fragility in the way she presents her Mimi. It's not my favorite tone. It's not a voice that just like spins and flows and gets so rich. But I do think that she makes a character out of it.
And I was kind of surprised that how much I really didn't enjoy this recording. I'm not going to go out and say that I fully hated it, but given how beloved it is and how elevated its reputation among listeners and collectors, I was just left a little bit cold. And I do enjoy some De Los Angeles from time to time. I really love her on that Faust recording with Gedda and Boris Christoph, but I just found her to be overly matronly, and lacking some of the, lacking the warmth and the real pathos that you get from many of the other recordings that you're going to talk about. And similarly, like Björling's a singer who I really, really like, but I found his voice to be so, it's like a very compared to many other tenors who are recorded, it's like a more slender instrument. It's very trumpet-like. It's very silvery, and it really has a lot of cut, which for Rodolfo, just to me was not as good of a match as a singer who can really like take flight and kind of wrap you up in the warmth of their voice.
Here's an unpopular take. I think that Jussi Björling is actually a great stylist, but I never liked his tone quality.
Yeah.
I think his vibrato it has different speeds that I don't always appreciate.
Mm-hmm. And some of it you wonder like how it would sound on better recording equipment, but like Lucina Mara really stole that recording for me. Because her Musetta is just so fun and sparkling. And we talked a lot about
Lucina Mara,
the late Lucina Mara. I was just about to say, like, we talked about her when she passed recently, and just what a stalwart, undersung opera singer. Never undersung personally, but under-recognized as for her contributions to the art form, except by like people in the industry or people in New York who got to see her a lot of times when she would jump in at the Met. And the biggest thing that this recording has going for it, I would say, is the conducting, because the orchestra sounds fantastic. The tempos are nice and fleet. There's a lot of contrast. There's just a lot of spirit, and Thomas Beecham worked very closely with Toscanini before making this recording, and so he really has the style in his ear and in his hands, and like you can hear it come across. But the singers, I don't know if they lived up to what some of their competitors in this little experiment were able to put down.
Well, if we're going to talk about musical detail, I think the most detailed Mimi on record is that of Maria Callas.
And oh my God, it's just stunning.
If you remember my Oliver's Corner from, I don't know how long ago, it was 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. I remember sitting down with the score and listening to Maria Callas sing this aria, Mi chiamano Mimi, and noticing how much of what she does is actually on the page. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think, like, why do all these other singers ignore all that stuff? And Maria Callas is so faithful to Puccini's markings. Let's hear a little bit of Mi chiamano Mimi, just so you could, grab your score and watch what she does. And it's really remarkable. It really shows us that Puccini knew what he was doing. He knew how to create a character through music.